Travis Wayne Goodzell. I had a comment I saw this morning about how women in the 50s and 60s, she remembers not having, not wearing their garments and wearing backless and sleeveless dresses. And she was wondering if I was aware of any pictures that might confirm this. But having gone through the temple in 89, I'm aware of the transition and why. See, back in my day, women were still going on missions at 21. This was because they were unable to get married, and so were considered the shameful, disgraced women who couldn't get married. That was a stigma that was spread throughout the church. But by my generation, women were purposely holding off getting married so that they can go on a mission and go around the world. That was their whole motivation. And of course, they would claim that their spiritual witness said that they had a mission on earth to do, and they, pursued anything other than marriage to justify taking a trip around the world. And I did notice that a lot of attractive women were going to Spain while I was in the MTC. That was very unusual. Because I didn't make any sense to me. Why would nobody want to marry these women? And it's because those women said no. God wants them to do something else with their life. And so because women waited until 21 to go on missions, and even waiting until marriage to get into the temple, thus they didn't wear the garments. And it brought back to mind that when I went through in 89, this was the new release of the two-piece garments, because the officiator who was there in the garment booth made me very uncomfortable as he tucked in my top into the bottom and ordered me to keep it that way. But then my Anubis, who was escorting me, that's who he represents, was telling me, did he tell you that you have to wear the one piece tucked into or the top into the bottom? And he said, you don't need to if you don't want to. And then I would later find out that at the Beehive warehouse where I was working, that the garments are holy, not because they're one piece, but because of the markings. So as long as the underwear has the markings, they're holy. But as for women, yeah, it was rare for women to take the initiative to go on missions in those early days. My mom did, because my mom was one of the free spirits who wanted to get out and see the world. She went to BYU, Hawaii, where she got her bachelor's. prior to her mission, and went on her mission to the Eastern States Mission, which was centered in Canada for the whole mission. And so she was one of the rare women in the church who, because of the lack of men available to marry her, because she grew up in Southern California, and purposely moved to Utah after her mission so that she could find a returned missionary to marry, because the prospects for a returned missionary were greater here in Utah. And thus found my dad, who was her home teacher while he was going to the University of Utah. But the majority of Mormon women in those days waited until a man asked them out and then asked them to marry, which normally at BYU would be instantly. That was why women, after graduating from high school, would go to the BYUs, is because of the returned missionaries who were there, who would get first selection of the graduated high school girls. But my mom, choosing to go to BYU Hawaii, limited her selections to marry in her early years, and that's why she went on a mission. And so the women who failed to be chosen by a returned missionary in those early years would go on to get a bachelor's themselves, and then at that point, they've got a bachelor's degree and they're now 21, so they decide, why not? I'll go on a mission. But not every woman would, and so many women would go without going to the temple, and thus not having the magic underwear, would be still wearing bra and panties. And that's why the church, I noticed over the last decade, have been encouraging women who don't get married, who are of age to choose to go to the temple and be endowed. They're encouraging that now. And this is the part of the danger that I see, because as a scientist, you observe patterns, you recognize anomalies, you develop a theory to try to explain the anomaly, and then you have a test for that theory for confirmation to see if you can replicate it. And so what happens is that women used to get a career because they used to get educated. And if men don't ask them to marry them, they become career women. And the church doesn't want this. The church has always said that a woman's place is in the home, barefoot and pregnant. And that pissed off women. And so what we're seeing now, by lowering the age of a woman who can go on a mission to 19, is not just to flood the earth with more missionaries, as that first couple of years did. It now makes it so that women are more likely to get married rather than get an education and thus get a career. See the malicious intent that's involved here? The church doesn't want women to be educated and get a career. They want women to be breeders. And with this change in age for women to go on missions, it allows little girls who are rebellious, because remember Hinckley came out and said, Women are not required to go on missions, and so his granddaughters rebelled and filed papers to go on missions. That was the big news story back then. Likewise, did many other women rebel and immediately filed papers to go on missions. And I don't understand why. As a fashion designer, the garments aren't very flattering to women. But nonetheless, if you believe strongly enough that the church is true, anything looks great. It's a garment only a Mormon woman can love. And yeah, my mom even suggested that because the garments are so ugly that it helps protect women against rapists. But yeah, the church is making the move under Nelson to prepare for the Millennial Kingdom, which means the government of the United States is about to collapse. And yeah, we're seeing that with the oncoming threat of the failure to pay our debts, the collapse of failing to raise the debt ceiling. The GOP are holding America hostage because before they were wanting to do away with Social Security. Even Senator Mike Lee was caught on tape as he tried to lie, saying, "Oh, I never said that." Yeah, you did. Here's the tape. And so those who are retired and rely on Social Security to pay rent and food, as well as those who are disabled and those who are unemployed, they're all in jeopardy here. And it's not as much a threat that they won't get the money as much as it'll be delayed. And just a delay alone could cause problems with paying rent and paying for food and essential living products. But this threat that the GOP has had is now becoming a reality as they see how they can blame the Democrats. But the latest proposal takes away food stamps. So yeah, they're purposely wanting to destroy America and wanting to blame Democrats for it. And so they'll have to cave in order to keep America running. But there's more likely a stock collapse that is in the future for this, as businesses, as we get nearer to the day, are going to start to panic and want to pull their stocks. And we're likely to have a stock market crash, and that'll result in an escalation of the cost of living beyond the escalation that COVID has already caused. And so we've got some difficult times ahead, which I hope you're preparing for or are prepared for right now, in case you hadn't caught on to the warning here. And so, yeah, the church has purposely gotten everything finished and finishing up right now, as I've done the videos explaining. And this is because they know that the destruction is near. And once that happens, career women will be unemployed. But so will the men. And so you're going to be faced with tough decisions. And the church is planning on polygamy. And thus, your decision will be made for you, as you'll be placed in arranged polygamous marriages. And so, no more education, no more career women. You'll be born and bred in the church to be a child bride to a polygamous administrative husband, because they're the only ones who are righteous to receive plural wives. The rest of the men who are wicked most likely will be snipped and put into slave labor to make the lifestyles of the administration. That's how it works. So, you can believe the church is true all you want. That doesn't change reality. So, but yeah, it was a trip down memory lane as to why women were wearing more revealing clothing back in those early days. It's because they weren't going through the temple, following the covenant path, which now orders polygamy under the law of chastity, as I've explained.